Hello, UCL Eco Marathon, UCLR, whoever's watching this, welcome back to yet another tutorial video. This time I'll be walking you through how we download Ansys and get it set up. So this is the full fat version of Ansys, so it won't have any of the limitations of the student license, so that really limits you in terms of the number of elements you can have in a mesh. And for the size of projects we do on UCLR, you really need the proper thing. Also, it'll let you use programs like ACP, Ansys's composite software for carbon fiber. We've got the whole Fluent package as well. You can get the CAE materials database, EduPack, that as well. So yeah, let's get into it. So you'll see, first of all, I'm on a Windows computer. You need Windows for Ansys. Simple enough. And the first thing I'll do is I want to make sure I'm either connected to EduRoam or on the UCL VPN. So I'm using my own computer right now and I'm not at UCL, but you can see here we've got the UCL VPN on. So we'll need that for later. And if you're not on EduRoam or you don't have the UCL VPN, it's fairly easy to find. Just Google UCL VPN and yeah, this first link should walk you through the process. It's really easy. Yep, great. Okay, next thing we'll do is go to download.ansys.com, and here it will probably, yep, it'll ask you for a login. So now, to get that login, I put it in Basecamp, shared it with all of you. So if I go to 3.basecamp.com and I log in, and then it should be in the Eco Marathon HQ along with the rest of our shared logins. Yep, so in the wiki, logins for external platforms, and I have not put it here yet, but I'll do that now. So the email you'll use, my email, and then the password is not that. That lovely randomly generated password. Okay, great. And now I'll go back here and yeah, I'll copy my email. And copy the password. Now this login is really valuable because it gives you access to download not just all of the Ansys software that UCL has a license for, actually more importantly it gives you access to all the documentation. So I'll just walk you through that now. So immediately we're brought to, yep, the downloads portal, and let's see, what are we looking at here? So, right, they've got, I'm not familiar with this installer, but it looks like this allows you to choose from all of the different software packages Ansys has. So the way I've normally done this is, yeah, I go to primary packages, and here it lists all of the different individual groups of software that Ansys makes. So structures is what you'll have the most experience with. You use this in second year for your mechanics labs. This is the finite element analysis software, but it's a lot more than that. If you click on the question mark there, it will tell you everything that's included in it. Right, so we've got Ansys Mechanical, that's the FEA software that you need. And then there's a lot of other stuff like additive suite if you're doing additive manufacturing. What have we got? The prep post bundles, which is for composites, and so much. You've got all of their CAD programs. Those are really nice actually. all the meshing, yeah. HPC, which allows you to take full advantage of your computer's hardware. Normally with the student license you're limited to using 2 cores on your PC. This you can use all of them, make it go a lot faster. Right, so structures is what you want if you're doing FEA simulations, structural integrity simulations. Fluids, if you're doing aero simulations, so Ansys Fluent, I don't know what else is included here, but yeah, you can get that there. Electronics, I don't even know what that does, could be good. And then that, I think you can ignore the rest. So these 3 are the main packages and materials. So if you want a material database, so if you're trying to get data on carbon fiber or specific alloys of aluminium, you can get it all from here, and it directly imports into Ansys Mechanical. So that'll be pretty helpful. And yeah, again, if you're getting any of the materials ones, pick Granta EduPack. Right, yep, and you can ignore the rest pretty much. So what I'll do now is I'll walk you through installing one of these packages. They're all pretty much the same process to go through, but for the sake of demonstration I'll download the structures package and I'll walk you through how we do that. So yeah, it's a fairly large file, 13 gigabytes. So it'll take a few minutes. Speaking of, I should probably just mention some of the hardware requirements from your computer. So I'd recommend having at least 16 gigabytes of RAM and a CPU with 4 cores at least. Otherwise, it's just going to run quicker on Winion, which is not the quickest. Yeah, and it'll help if you have a graphics card, but only if your GPU has at least 8 gigabytes of RAM. So another thing I'll walk you through now is how to enable your GPU for Ansys. And the way we do that is fairly similar for both Windows 10 and 11. We go to, you right click on the start menu, go to System, and should be, yep, Advanced System Settings. And then if we go to Environment Variables, right, and you'll see I've created a variable here under System Variables that says ANS GPU override, set that to a value of 1. So if I didn't have this, I would simply click New, ANS GPU underscore override, and set that value to 1, and then click OK. Then you would reboot your computer just so the next time you load up Ansys, it knows, okay, great, the GPU has been authorized. Right. So I'll come back to this once the structures installer has finished downloading. Okay, whilst we're downloading the installer, the next thing I'll walk you through is that really important documentation I mentioned. So if we go just in the Ansys customer portal, again, download.ansys.com, go up to knowledge resources, and then we go down to online documentation. And then it tells you go to ansyshelp.ansys.com. So I would bookmark that because this is really the most important resource you could possibly have for learning Ansys. It may ask you for authentication. I've tried to turn this off, so hopefully it's not going to do that in the future. But yeah, and I may end up changing this login to an email that everyone can access. Great. So, this page is incredible. It's got about, must be nearly 100 different manuals for each of the different products that are part of Ansys. So, first thing we'll do is we'll just go through A through Z and find the really important bits of documentation that I think you may want to look at. So can skip all of these. Ansys Granter MI, that is CES EduPack. If you want to learn more about how to use that, that can really help. In fact, if you're doing your mech, whatever it was, manufacturing and design course in second year where you're making the impeller, this will teach you far better than the actual course will. So look at that. Yes, it for A. Okay, I'll highlight composites. Let's see what else. Design Modeler you may use. It's one of their 3 CAD programs. There's Design Modeler, Discovery, and Space Claim. Space Claim is the one you're likely most familiar with. It's the most simple and robust. I'd use that. Design Modeler is a slightly older program which has some features and capabilities that just aren't in Space Claim for whatever reason, like defining symmetry for your simulations. You may end up using that. And Discovery is Ansys' new CAD tool, which lets you do really quick and dirty simulations, just to give you a sort of ballpark idea of whether your design is going to stand up to the loads you put it under. It's not meant for final design validation, so I don't think it's too useful for us. It's just meant to be a sort of tool whilst you're designing. But if you're using Fusion 360, I would just use that and use their basic simulations for those purposes. So I don't think we'll even need to highlight Design Modeler or Discovery. Right, E through H, Fluent, if you're doing CFD, there it is. Yeah, Granter EduPack, actually, that's a better one for materials. Mechanical application, that's a massive one. That's, again, the FEA program. Meshing, this is a lifesaver for not just Ansys, honestly, but any CAD package that involves creating a mesh. It describes not just how to go about it in Ansys, but really the principles of what makes a good mesh and some of the theory behind it if you care about that. So definitely be sure to look at that. Space Claim, I'd highlight that. Again, their simple CAD package. Yeah, and finally Workbench. So you'll be familiar with Workbench, kind of. This is Workbench. It's where you define the layout of whatever you're working on. Okay, so we've highlighted everything that's really relevant to us. So yeah, screenshot this if you want. I'll put it in Basecamp actually. These are the most useful things to us. So I'll just go through a couple of them. So if we open the Workbench documentation, may take a minute because it's such a large manual. And so what do we got? We've got a few different pieces of documentation. Engineering Data Users Guide, you can look at that if you want, but really the main thing we're here for is the Workbench Users Guide. You can also download it as a PDF if you'd prefer, but I really like the online system they have here. So I'll just wait for that to load. Great. So if you've never used Ansys before, I would just go straight to Overview, look at the user interface overview, and I'll just go through a couple of pages to really illustrate how well written this documentation is. So really it allows you to go from having absolutely no pre-existing knowledge of Ansys at all to knowing everything you need to in order to conduct your analyses. So yeah, it's got lots of nice images, and then it'll link to relevant pages. So just off the top of my head, I'll highlight a couple really useful pages in the workbench documentation. So yep, might want to look at configuring units, switching to millimeters, which is far more helpful. I'll walk you through a few workbench setup pages after we've gone through the install. But yeah, these initial few chapters really talk you through the workflow. So how to add systems, how to connect them, so creating connected systems. Absolutely have a look at that, because like this sort of thing I've done here, which looks incredibly confusing, I would have no idea how to do that if I didn't just go to that page in Ansys manual. And again, I'll just show you for illustration just how well documented it is. Yeah, so it's got so many picture examples of what they're talking about. So again, just really intuitive way to learn. So that's it for the workbench users guide. I'll go back to, so if you hit home here, it'll take you back to the documentation homepage. It's not usually this slow, so don't let that put you off. Okay, next we can have a look at the mechanical application. Yeah, this one is it's several thousand pages actually, but you absolutely are not expected to read all of that. The way I went about using it is, okay, again, I'll ignore most of these. It's got some tutorials, so if you open up that page, it'll give you some examples to work through. Wait for that to load in the background, but yeah, we can go to mechanical users guide. So the users guides are the bit you're really looking for when you get to this landing page with loads of links. Okay, great. Again, I would look at application interface and analysis types. I mean, just having this here is a lifesaver. It explains all of the different types of analyses, whereas if you were just looking, if you were looking at Workbench and you see all of these analyses here and you've got no clue what they do or whether you'd ever want to use them, it explains it all. So yeah, for example, a structural optimization analysis, which is like topology optimization in Fusion, it'll talk you through all of the different stages, all of the different options you might want to tweak, how, different pre-analyses will affect the options you choose for the optimization, and again, workflows. It is just so simple, gives you such methodological steps to creating your analysis. So for example, I'll just go to specify analysis settings. So you're probably familiar with how if you go to Ansys and you're looking here, for example, and you've got so many options, I mean literally dozens of options, and you've got no idea what they do. Well, if you go back here, it'll tell you. So these are all different options when you do a structural optimization. And yeah, it's great. Another thing, the search function is so helpful. So say, like I was having an issue where in my simulations it was telling me, yeah, I'm having a bisection. That sounds concerning. I'll search bisection. and it should point me in the right direction. Yep, so it's given me 4 different mentions in the manual. Okay, and then I can find out, right, bisection is nothing to be concerned about. It is just Ansys' way of trying to obtain a convergent solution when it was unable to. So absolutely nothing to be concerned about there, even though here I get, you know, big scary warning. Completely fine. So really, the manual is a lifesaver for troubleshooting your solutions, because you will get just loads of warnings and error messages, and it may make you think you're not going to get accurate results, but it'll explain whether that's the case, and you know, if it is an issue, what you can do to fix that. So I could go through more examples where I just find these warning messages. So increase the pinball for my contacts. Say I have no idea what that means. If I just Google pinball, it'll tell me that that is the radius that defines, you know, how contact between 2 bodies is detected. And then I can figure out for my case, do we need to change that or do we not? And in my case, I could just ignore this warning. It's fine as is. Great, and let me just go back to the home and see if there's anything else I want to quickly walk you through. I think I'll keep it relatively brief. I won't go through the rest, but I will say absolutely go through the meshing guide before you make a mesh in any Ansys platform or even other software like Abacus. Same principles apply. Yeah, and then if you're doing CFD, go through Fluent. It'll have tutorials as well. Like here, look, mechanical. It's got 23 different tutorials, and they'll often come with some downloadable files. So let's see, roller mechanism for rigid body dynamics. Sounds like could be useful for a dyno for the Eco Marathon team. So, I mean, so many helpful examples here to help you learn it. It's a dyno. Look at that. And yeah, what are we learning here? We're learning joints. Yeah, don't know how to do that, but yeah, again, can learn it from here. So yeah, Fluent will have similar examples, even composites, ACP, Ansys Composite pre-post. Such a small program, even that they give half a dozen tutorials that I was able to work through. So yeah, start out with the workbench manual. Again, don't read the whole manual, learn the basics, use the tutorials, search anything you don't understand. Once you do workbench, go on to mechanical when you eventually jump from the workbench app into mechanical. And then from there, once you're in mechanical or in Fluent, so workbench will point you to either mechanical or Fluent, then you can go to meshing and figure out how to make your mesh. Right, now that, oh dear, yeah, download has failed. That must be my Wi-Fi. I'll come back once this is downloaded. Okay, so you rejoin me with the installer downloaded, and again, this is the exact file that I've downloaded from download.ansys.com, so you'll get the same. Again, I've chosen the structures package. The next thing I'll do is I'll extract all, and yep, default destination, that's fine. And we'll see how fast my computer can do this. 4 minutes, bloody hell. Alright, I'll pause the video and come back. Okay, great, the folder has finished extracting, So now I'll just double click, go in the folder, and then loads of folders here, but the only thing you want is setup. So I'll right click setup and click run as admin. It'll ask you for your password, I think. Okay, so this is the first screen you'll see. So you can ignore these two. All we'll do is click install Ansys products, and you can agree to these. Create an installation directory. Usually what it comes up with by default is fine. I'd enable that, and yep. So this is what you should have ticked. Don't bother ticking the QA services. Yes. Click next, and this is really important. So we need to connect to a licensed server. So I told you to be on eduroam or the UCL VPN earlier. This is really when you absolutely need to. So we won't be able to communicate with the licensed server if we are not on UCL Wi-Fi. So we need the licensed server, which I'll also put these details which I'm about to copy into Basecamp. So I've got the host name here, and host name, you don't need to change the port number because it's 1055, the default one, and the host name lick-ansys.ucl.ac.uk. This will come up allowing it to communicate with the license server. Allow that. And next, you're going to pick what from this package we want to install. And again, this is a structures package, so it won't have, for example, Fluent and all the CFD software. But if we expand these, we can have a look at the different things it gives us. So just select all of Ansys products. Discovery, again, their new CAD software, kind of fusion-like simulations. Don't need that. Electronics reliability, probably don't need that. Why would Ecomarathon need reliable electronics? Explicit dynamics, maybe keep that if you're doing some dynamic simulations. I don't know about that. Motion, again, I don't actually know these packages. Go through the manual and see whether we need them. But structural mechanics, so you absolutely want mechanical products ticked, and that should be it. For the sake of doing a complete installation, I'll leave all of these ticked, but if you're this will give you a full mechanical installation, but if you're short on space, again it requires 28 gigabytes, then you can untick everything but mechanical products. Let's have a look in the additional tools. Yeah, we don't need those. You don't need those. So smallest installation you can get is 19.3. Then you click next, then it'll install. I've already got it installed on my computer, so I'm not going to do that. But yeah, go through that. And again, if you're on eduroam or UCL VPN, you'll be able to install with no issues. Exit the install. Great. So once you install, you'll go to your start folder, and yep, and here it all is. So this is simply from a structures installation like I've just done in the installer. It comes with all of this, and if you're unfamiliar with Ansys, you'll start with Workbench, and again that's this home page basically where you can add all of your analyses, just drag and drop them into here. I'll go through a couple things I would recommend now that you've got it installed. So if we go to units, yeah, millimeters, that helps a lot. Otherwise, you're having to type really small numbers. Right, the other thing I wanted to show you is how to correctly configure Ansys Mechanical to work with your computer hardware. So the first thing we'll do is open Ansys Mechanical, and you can do that either if you've already got an analysis, you can click on any of these model cells from Workbench, or if you go to the Start menu, go to All Apps, go to the Ansys folder, and then we'll scroll down to Mechanical, yep, and you go there, and you'll get a screen that looks something like this. Right, next thing we'll want to do is, if you, in the top bar here, click on Home, then if we go to Solve and then click on that little drop down, then here this gives us all of the settings where we can tell Ansys Mechanical the specs of our CPU and GPU. So you'll see I've enabled distribute solution. I highly recommend you do that. Just allows it to use the full capabilities of your CPU, and then you can also click hybrid parallel, which is another fancy algorithm it uses to solve. So Ansys will somewhat intelligently decide what solution process it should use, which is good, so you can leave both of those ticked. What you will need to work out for yourself is the number of CPU cores and GPU acceleration. And the way you can do that is if we right click in the taskbar, then go to Task Manager, and if I click on CPU first of all, we'll see I've got 8 cores. So ignore logical processors. So I'll show you, like Intel will advertise that this has 6 logical processors, but in reality there's only 8 physical cores. So we're using the number of cores rather than the number of threads in the CPU. So 8 cores, go back to Ansys, and max number of cores 8. And then GPU acceleration, yep, if you've got an NVIDIA GPU or an AMD one, I believe it also supports, yep, you can select that there. If you've got Intel integrated graphics, which you'll know if it says under GPU Intel or AMD integrated graphics, then just leave it alone and set this to none. But since I've got a discrete GPU, I'll set number of utilized GPU devices to 1. Ignore the memory settings. Again, it'll work out the best settings for that. Then you can just click OK, and yeah, you're set. It'll use all of the power your computer has, so that should save a lot of time, because I think by default it only uses 2 cores and no GPU acceleration. If you've used Winion in the past, it'll be really quite slow because, again, limited to just 2 cores, so this will really help. Yeah, and I think that's about it for what I wanted to go through in this video, which is less about how to use Ansys and more just how to set it up and install it. I hope it was useful. I think soon enough I'll do another video where I talk about the sort of workflows within Ansys that would be quite helpful to the team. So I think once I've finally finished my dissertation and the carbon wheels, which is effectively done, I'll do a video where I talk through exactly what I've done here, any future work that the team will need, and an explanation of not just the useful processes in mechanical, but also ACP, the carbon fiber composite specific software. So yeah, because this will be really helpful for not just finishing off any unfinished bits of the wheel, but also chassis and any other bits of the car that will be made of carbon fiber. So yeah, yes, hope this was useful. Again, leave any comments either in YouTube or Basecamp, and I should be notified, or just message me directly. Yep, see you later.